what is the big beautiful bill and the tax cuts and the defense spending and all that? What does it mean for all of us here in Canada? And I think a lot. I really do. And our first chart, we can bring that up right away. It shows that we need to do something up here. And I think we could take a page out of the Trump administration's book in a way. We're seeing our economy shrinking down by just below the break-even mark, 0.1% for the month of April. Early estimates, or at least in May, we believe or we know that we're pretty flat. We're just not getting any growth in this country. And so obviously reasons for that would be the tariffs, the sectoral tariffs, the tariffs on Canada. That has caused a lot of anxiety for many people, for businesses doing business in the US. And remember, we send 70% of what we pull out of the ground and what we build to the United States. So when our largest trading partner decides to put tariffs on our goods, that is difficult. It is difficult for businesses. If it doesn't affect you directly, it definitely will affect a business that perhaps you're doing business with. So, you are doing business with somebody and they're being affected by the tariff. So it's interesting to see that what the current administration is doing. They're looking at trade, they're looking at deregulation, and they're looking at, as I said just in the previous segment, taxes. And here in Canada, I think we are looking at the situation similar. We're talking about deregulation. We see Premier Ford out in Alberta most recently working on a deal with Alberta based on trade. We're hearing the Prime Minister Carney, talking about tearing down or bringing down those interprovincial barriers for business, for provinces to do business with each other. And I've seen statistics, and we've had people on our show not that long ago talking about how GDP could increase as much as 6 to 8% based on provinces just being able to do faster and more free business amongst each other. So we are focusing on deregulation, trade. We just heard that our first shipment of liquefied natural gas went to Asia, first time. So we are focusing on trade with other parts of the world, whether it's Europe, whether it's Asia. And I guess in a weird way, we have the US to thank for that. And I chuckle sometimes because maybe the US didn't anticipate that the rest of the world would start doing a lot more business with each other and kind of leave out the US a little bit. We know that the US or Canadian exports to the US, lowest it's been since 1997. And exports to the rest of the world, we've seen that go up 5–10% recently. And I would anticipate that's going to go up a whole lot more. So we're taking care of trade as well. One thing that I think we are lacking to get our country moving and a lot faster, and that is taxes. We've talked to tax professionals on this show before, whether it's professionals from KPMG or anywhere. Taxes is a big factor when you do business in Canada, when you live in Canada. A lot of individuals have left this country because of our taxes. And I think our government needs to focus more on the tax aspect, that three-legged stool. We're working on trade, deregulation, and taxes. Let's take a page out of President Trump's book with respect to taxes. Let's try and lower taxes. I know President Carney campaigned on a 1% tax deduction for, I believe it was the lower tax bracket, or lower two tax brackets, the bottom two tax brackets. Well, that's just not enough. Comes out to a savings of just a few $100s a year. Not enough for a family that's going to really make a difference. So let's focus on taxes. That's my message to our government today. Our next chart here shows income taxes, Canada versus the US. Interesting. And I guess it's not until you get to the tax bracket, 180,528 and above, then you start to see the tax rates sort of the same, 32% versus 33%. This is on a federal level, but the taxes prior to that, especially between 41,000 and 83,000, is 20.5% here in Canada. Between 12,000 and say 48,500, only 12%. Interesting. And you can clearly see that our tax rates are definitely higher than what they have in the US. Our next chart shows the provincial tax rates. Depends on what province you live. You can see the provincial tax rates. Ontario, obviously, being to the right of Alberta and to the left of Quebec there. You can see the provincial tax rates. But probably the most important thing for our discussion about taxes is this red arrow. And it says, example calculation, $60,000 of income in Canada versus the US in 2025. So this would be for an Ontario resident. Federal tax is about $91.44, provincial tax about $34.70. So the tax would be approximately $12,614. United States, California resident, federal tax roughly $69.62, plus state tax near $24.27 for income tax of $93.89. That is about 25% less from a tax perspective, 25% less. And that is why we're seeing a lot of people moving out of Ontario, moving out of Canada. We're seeing people moving out of some states in the US, New York, going down to Florida, moving down to Texas, where state tax is a lot less. Federal tax in the US obviously is less than we have it up here. You know, not too long ago, and I haven't seen recent statistics, but Ontario used to be the fourth highest jurisdiction for taxes in North America. And that's not something we want to be fourth highest in. So let's focus on taxes. I think we need to get our government to do so. Our next chart, what do tariffs, Canadian trade deficit narrows for the US and the rest of the world. You can see here, as I was saying, the trade balance with the US, you can see how it's come down. Canada's trade deficit narrows in April, but stays at near record highs. That is the total trade balance in blue. So it's narrowing, it's going back up, but still at record highs. And with the US, our surplus with the US has definitely shrunk, kind of flattened out there, but definitely shrunk. Our next chart, merchandise trade with the United States is our next chart. There it is on the left-hand side. And as you can see, we're not sending as much. Our exports to the US have come down tremendously. Our imports from the US have come down. And then you can see our exports to countries on the right, other than the United States, and our imports from those countries other than the United States are starting to rise. So is this what the United States wanted? Countries like Canada moving away from the US, moving away from doing business with the United States? I don't think so. And, hopefully things don't backfire for the US, because I think the rest of the world is figuring out how to, I don't want to say circumvent the US, but definitely do business with many other parts of the world, especially Canada. And I think it will only increase. And I think when we look back 10 years from now, I think we could look at 2025 as the year that we saw a turning point in the way Canada trades, the way Canada does business. And I think that will be a positive overall for our country.